we had just now. We're so excited to welcome you here tonight to our second webinar in our ShillMed Lifestyle Education webinar series. To those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And if you were here with us last week and are back this week, thanks for sticking with us. We're excited to explore some new topics and hope that tonight will be informative and helpful for you. So I'm Emily Schill. I'm your host for tonight, and I'm excited to talk to you about personal history is our topic for tonight. Now, if you haven't had a chance to download tonight's module, you can look over to the right of your screen in your chat window, and you can go ahead and access that by accessing our website and then using the password provided. If you haven't already had a chance to read through it, don't worry about it. You'll be able to follow along just fine with us tonight. But I do suggest it's a great module. If you have time after the webinar tonight to go over it in more detail, I think you'll find a lot of value there. So with that said, we want to just jump right in. Now, tonight for personal history, what we'll be doing is exploring some of the experiences and expectations and habits from our past that maybe have been shaped by experiences from our childhood and adolescent years. And we want to start off by recognizing that sometimes exploring the past in relation to habits that we want to change can feel particularly painful at times. And so we encourage you to as much as possible, look at things through an objective lens without judgment for yourself or any family members or peers that may have shaped the way that you view your relationship with food or exercise or anything like that. And instead, just look at it objectively. Just it is what it is, and what can we learn from it? So we're going to jump right in with a few fun facts for tonight. Since we're talking about food, I thought we would start with, did you know that one study showed that omega-3 fatty acids from fish were as effective as Prozac at treating depression? We read that this week and we were both kind of shocked by it. I thought for sure we needed to share that with you. I just think that's a powerful reminder of how much the food that we eat can affect us both physically and mentally. So we're going to keep on going here. Did you know that understanding your history and how it relates to current patterns? Thanks. Got the sound back? Thumbs up. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, I just want to address, I must have hit the mute button. I want to address those of you that are already on meal replacements. It may seem a little bit counterproductive to even be talking about food while you're in this period of replacing all of your meals with these shakes and bars. But the reason that we're doing that is I just want to remind you, the whole purpose of the meal replacement program is to give your body a total reset. And we're doing that in several ways. We're resetting your body through meal replacements by resetting your weight. And we're hoping that in a fairly quick period of time, we can get you back to your ideal weight or close to it, depending on what you and Dr. Schill come up with in your collaborations. We're resetting your stomach size and your stomach's expectation of what it needs to be full. And we're resetting your palate and the cravings that you have. And then probably most importantly, along with also resetting an exercise routine by dropping the weight that makes things more possible for you than they have been before. But most importantly, we're resetting your total body nutrition. And we're giving your body all of the nutrition that it needs so that it can let go of the excess weight that your body doesn't need. So while we're in this period of physical transformation, in order to make that sustainable after you're done with the meal replacements, we're also working on undergoing a mental transformation. And that's the purpose of both tonight and webinars going forward, is to kind of help you reshape some of your ways of thinking so that after we do this great reset, then you can move forward with that and maintain those changes. So I promise not to talk about anything triggering like Oreos tonight. We'll just stick with things like fish that, I don't know if you're like me, but that's not all that appealing anyway. So anyway, let's jump right in. We're going to start by talking about patterns from your past, both patterns of behaviors and also just patterns of expectations and attitudes. So we're going to start by jumping into family meal patterns, and I want to just highlight a couple of things. um, First of all, we're identifying them as family meal patterns because a lot of our childhood meal patterns were shaped by our families, but it doesn't have to be exclusively family either. So it could have been shaped by peers. It could have been shaped by, other people that you spend a lot of time with. And the other thing I want to highlight just as we look over this list is just that I feel like this module did a really good job of making this a fairly neutral list. Like, as I was reading through it, I was surprised at how many times I thought, "Oh, well, is if I say that this applies to me, was that a good thing or a bad thing?" And so this isn't necessarily trying to say if you did this, it was good. If you did this, it was bad. It's more kind of what we talked about at the beginning, just staying objective about what was your reality. And those things could have had a positive or negative effect on you, depending on your perception of them and your experience with them. So let's just take a second. I'm just going to kind of verbally run through this list. If you read through the module, this is straight out of the beginning of the module. So you're already familiar with it. But I want you to take note as I read through this, which ones of these directly feel applicable to you. So here they are. Your parents felt it was important for the family to sit down together for at least one meal a day. Family members ate whenever and whatever they wanted, and the family rarely ate together. The children ate meals different from those eaten by adults. The kitchen was strictly off limits outside of meal times. So that was one that I thought, wait, is that a good thing or a bad thing if it's strictly off limits? And same thing with the next one. Children were forced to eat foods they didn't like. I think some people would view that as a good thing. Some people would view it as a bad thing. Someone in the family had special needs and ate separate meals that others weren't allowed. And that's one that I feel like is just that's just the reality of the situation. It's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just maybe how it was, and it may have affected you one way or the other. No candies, cookies, ice cream, or other sweets were normally kept in the house. They were only allowed on special occasions. The children had no say in what they wanted for any of their meals, but were expected to eat what was prepared. Children were allowed or encouraged to fix their own meals with someone to guide their early attempts at learning. The children had to fix their own meals because there was not an adult around to prepare them. There were times when there was not enough food in the house for meals and people were left hungry. I guess that would probably be bad no matter how you looked at it. The children were told to clean their plates and reminded of starving children in the world. The dinner table felt like a battleground, open season for criticism. There was fierce competition for favorite foods or portions among siblings, and the family ate out or ate fast foods much of the time. So again, just kind of think about if any of those apply to you. And we're going to go forward with question number one. Now, this one you don't necessarily have to answer in the chat window. You're welcome to if you want to. But if you're with somebody tonight, maybe discuss this with them. I'm going to give you 1 minute, but I want to know, what aspects of your childhood meal patterns do you see carrying over into your adult patterns? And that can be good and bad or things that you view as positive and negative. So, for example, as I was looking over this, I thought, my parents really made it a point to sit down and have family meals together and set the table for dinner every night, which I definitely don't do as well as my mom did. But those are things that I have certain expectations in my mind because that was a pattern in my home. So you're going to see things from your childhood, hopefully that you want to continue, and things that you want to change. So let's just go ahead and take 1 minute and kind of think through those things. Maybe discuss it with somebody close to you if you have somebody, and then we'll go on and share in the chat window with the next question. Okay, moving right along. Now, this is less about behaviors and more about maybe attitudes that you sensed from those around you, and especially those closest to you who cared about their opinions. Just kind of take note. And again, this is not necessarily something you might want to share with the full group, but maybe with somebody close to you. How much importance did your parents assign to your physical appearance and or size? Did you feel that how you looked was important to them? So, was your physical appearance important to your parents? Were your parents critical of your appearance or size? Were you subject to any name calling as a child or adolescent in regards to your appearance or size? And then, even if your parents or siblings were not critical of your appearance and size, did they place a lot of importance on their own appearance and size? So, again, just kind of considering if any of those apply to you and reflecting on how they have shaped your confidence or your beliefs or your behaviors, even into adulthood. And then going along with that, and this may feel like a little disjointed here, but I think that it really goes along well with how we are being shaped because of our past beliefs and experiences. We want to talk just for a second about emotional eating, which, if you're normal, you have done it before, like all of us. But I want you to just reflect on this. I thought this was a really interesting exercise. If you tend to eat when you're feeling strong emotions such as sadness, depression, excitement, or anger, which foods do you choose? So be really specific about both pieces of that. First, think about which emotion you're feeling when you choose to emotionally eat. And second, what kinds of foods do you turn to? Because I think you might be surprised that it's more specific than you may have realized. So I'm going to give you just a second to kind of think about that. This is everybody was pretty quick to know what their trigger foods are. And I think that's awesome. The thing that surprised me about this when I did this exercise this week, and here you can share too if you have any extra insights, but did you learn anything about yourself as you were doing this? And not just this last exercise, but just the last several slides that we've gone through. When you're circling things that apply to you, when you're thinking about what your triggers are and what you turn to, I'll tell you the thing that surprised me about me was that I tend to eat when I'm stressed, not the other emotions. I kind of went through those emotions and I was like, no, not that one, not that one. It's really stress. It's always stress for me. And as much as I love chips and salsa, if you were to ask me what kinds of foods I like, I would have said salty, sweet, all of the above. But I realized that I go to sweets or chocolate when I'm stressed. So, anyway, that seems really basic, but just understanding that was really powerful for me this week because there were several times when I went to reach for the chocolate and I thought, oh, this is just a stress response. And that didn't mean that I didn't eat chocolate at all this week, but it did mean that 4 times out of 5 or 9 times out of 10, I stopped myself because I realized what was happening. And I think it's so empowering just to do these exercises that help trigger in your mind a realization of what is happening when you make those choices. Um, Chips and dip, M&Ms, ice cream, cold cereal. I love all of these things, and now I'm hungry for all of them. But yes, I think realizing this is empowerment. So thank you so much for participating so much so far. Keep it up. This makes it so much more fun when everybody's pitching in. We're going to move on now to your own mental patterns towards food. And this is somewhat what we've covered already, but I want to dive a little bit into some more specifics. Now, any of you who are currently in our meal replacement program, you may have heard some of these already from us because we discussed them with our patients. But I want to know if you can relate to any of the following scenarios. These are just 4. If you can come up with another one, we would love to hear it and share with everyone because we can all learn from it. But see if any of these 4 are things that you can see yourself in. Number 1, I would rather eat what's left on my plate or my kid's plate than waste food. Can anybody relate to that? So you end up eating more than you want to eat because you don't want to throw it away. Okay, number 2, I find myself overeating because of previous fears that there won't be enough or that I won't be able to eat those foods again. I tell myself this might be the last time, or maybe this will be the last time if you're trying to start a diet the next day. Now, that's called scarcity mentality. And a lot of times we find that in people who either didn't have, went through a period of time at any point in their life where they didn't have enough to eat, or possibly were raised in a situation where they were constantly denied foods that they really wanted. So that might be you if you were in either of those kind of circumstances. Number three, my relationship with food relates to my need to control my surroundings. So if you have control issues, which raise your hand with me, right? But when we feel out of control or when we feel we can't control things and it's frustrating to us, how often do we turn to food for comfort or for a choice that we can control? Right. Um, and then number four, when I overeat, I feel shame. I feel like this is something that everyone deals with at some point, right? But then that shame then can cause me to make more unhealthy choices, either overeating or undereating. Either direction can be harmful to us, right? Um, okay. So, and then Zach says social eating, right? So all of these things can be struggles with our mindset that that we need to reframe. I have a really good friend who's a very successful and wonderful therapist, and she talks about reframing, right? So that's the exercise we're going to do next. First of all, before we jump into this exercise, and I'm not going to give extra time for this, but considering all of the things that we just talked about with your past, if there was one of those four things that you could relate to, where do you feel like that might stem from? The obvious one would be number two, right? If you had a shortage of food at any time in your life, you might be stemming from that experience. So that's kind of the easiest one to call on. But are there other experiences from your past that have influenced the way you think about one of those four things? And then I love what Mark is saying here about how, being raised to eat everything on our plate. I think we all heard that as kids to some extent, and there was value in that to an extent, but then it can lead us to other harmful behaviors of overeating. So thank you for sharing that, Mark. That's perfect. Now, let's just take 2 minutes and drop them in the comments as you think of them, but let's practice reframing. And you can pick any one of these. It doesn't have to be all four of them. But if you, for example, if you struggle with number one, I would rather eat what's left on my plate or my kid's plate than waste food. How can we reframe that to change how we view that, which then will lead to a change in behavior? I'm going to give you 2 minutes on this one. Just drop the comments and be sure you're reading each other's comments because these are so fun to read. Sorry, muted myself again. I love reading these. I hope you guys are getting a lot out of reading each other's too. I love what Cam said about putting things in the past and moving forward. We're going to end with that tonight here in just a minute. And that's such an important perspective to maintain. I love what Steven said about, sorry, Steve, what you said about leftovers for lunch. just making it into a positive thing, right? And one thing Dr. Schill says to people a lot too is it's waste either way, right? If we're looking at number one, you either waste it in the trash can or you waste it on your own body. And so, just reframing things like that, think about the power that gives you to then make a different choice than you've made in the past. Having kids moved out, that's great. Okay, great job, you guys. And the more we practice reframing, the more power we're going to have to make those changes. I love this. Okay, we are going to move pretty quickly through the next few parts. We've got about 7 minutes to go. This has been so much fun. Part 3 is really about overcoming inaccurate expectations when it comes to our own physical appearances. And I think this is really important when it comes to weight loss because we've got to reframe what our goals are too. So let's just take a look at a few of these quotes. Society's standards of beauty change over time, but are frequently at odds with most people's genetic inheritance. I mean, we know this. We don't need to go into great detail about this, but part of what I love about what we do here at ShillMed is we change your perspective about what your goal is. So while so many weight loss programs are focused on getting into a certain pant size or wearing the same dress size you wore in high school or whatever, we are shifting the needle to point you towards healthy levels of fat and muscle, and you'll become more comfortable in your own body regardless of any, look at number 4, any physical limits that aren't going to change. You're never going to be taller or shorter than you are. You're not necessarily going to change your frame or your build, but those things don't matter anymore because when you are looking at your measures, your lab reports, your like I said, your measures of how much muscle and fat are on your body, then suddenly you're going to become so confident and comfortable in your own body because your goals have become about being at a healthy level. And trying to achieve a certain dress size often leads us to unhealthy levels, which also leads to unrealistic expectations. So I love that. And then let me just touch really quick on number 2. I'm not going to read that whole quote, but basically it's saying that we can't change our history, which are the things that we've been talking about tonight. But I love this. You have a choice in how you assimilate all these bits of experience and how you use your understanding of the events to make further choices. And my good friend that I talked about earlier, that's a therapist, she gives talks all the time to teenagers, and I love what she says about creating new roadways in our brain. And if you think about freeways, how easy they are. You've got so much traffic on them; they're easy to drive on versus going off-roading up a hill full of underbrush and bumps and all of this stuff. Forging a new path is going to be uncomfortable and difficult at first, but the more cars you have driving over that, the more you redirect traffic that way, pretty soon you're going to have these big roadways that are much more natural to drive on. And we can do that in our brain. It takes work, but by redirecting traffic in our brain, and it takes a lot of effort at first, we can build new roadways and have different experiences. And I love that. Just really quick breezing over number 3. If you have been a victim of trauma or abuse, you will need more than these modules, and we can help connect you with the people. If you don't already have somebody that's helping you with that, that is going to be essential to your success, in this program and obviously beyond as well. And we are here to help connect you with that if that's a need that you have. And then just really quick, number 5, during this time of weight loss, as well as during long-term weight management, it is important to notice and learn to appreciate other aspects of your appearance that have nothing to do with your weight. I found that really powerful and was surprised at how difficult it was. And I'm not going to take a full minute this time because we're running short on time, but I want you to do this with yourself and also with a partner. If you have somebody there with you tonight, do it right after we hop off here. But write down as many words or phrases that you can think of to describe your appearance without using any weight related terms. You might be surprised that it's harder than you think. It was harder for me than I expected it to be. And then ask your partner to do the same for you. Ask your husband or wife or whoever you're with to tell you what their favorite qualities or about your appearance specifically are, that have nothing to do with your weight. And that is just a really interesting exercise to kind of explore. Now, along those lines, um, let's see. I also want to touch on the fact that beyond your physical appearance, go beyond that with yourself and with your partner and talk about the things that have nothing to do with your appearance that are the most valuable. And I saw this quote about a month ago and I loved it. My body is the least interesting thing about me. And I think we get so caught up in in our, especially in these programs where we're trying to help you lose weight. But I think it's so important to remember that we're helping you to lose the weight so that you can feel comfortable and confident and healthy in your own body so that you can shine all of the great things that about you that have nothing to do with your physical appearance, that is what you have to offer the world. So remember that as we're focusing on our physical bodies to an extent, the end goal is to focus less on them, really. And then going along with that, I loved this quote too. Your legacy isn't physical. What you will pass on to the world, what you'll pass on to your family has nothing to do with your physical body. And I love that too. Um, Now, part 4 is really an intro to other webinars that we're going to do. We want to talk in the future about barriers to success with this, with making these changes. Obviously, making healthy choices is going to carve out time and money, and that can be difficult. I want to address that very specifically in webinars all on its own. And then, of course, the mindset, not just around change, but around spending the time and money to invest in your own health. That takes a mindset shift as well. So we'll address that in further weeks. And then just to conclude, just remember that your past doesn't shape your future. We've kind of touched on that already, but I love this quote. Never be a prisoner of your past. It was just a lesson, not a life sentence. And we have the power to change and to move forward and to make those new roadways in our brain. So this is how the module ends. I love this idea of taking an experimental approach. So we talked at the beginning about approaching this objectively and non-judgmentally. Sometimes our loyalties to our past, to the people that we love in our past, can put up barriers to us really on it, taking an honest assessment of the things that may have affected us in good or bad ways. But if we think of ourselves as a scientist with our behaviors as the focus of study, it can help us move from a position of highly judgmental criticism to one of detached analysis. And I really like that idea. That is we're trying to uncover the things that are embedded in our minds and our brains that affect our behaviors. That can be a really effective approach. So your challenge for the week is this. It's a really simple one. Observe or reflect on your attitudes towards food as a scientist this week. Write down your observations. And as always, we love it when you share with us what you're learning and how we can help. So, as we conclude tonight, I just want to thank you so much for being here and for your participation in this webinar. I want to remind you that we're so excited. Next week is our first guest speaker. It'll be Whitney Bean from Intuitive Life Coaching, and I have personally worked with her in the past. She is very knowledgeable and wise. She has a whole business built around helping people achieve greater emotional wellness and resilience. And because of some of the feedback we received in our survey last week, I asked her next week to specifically address stress management and how she effectively helps patients with tools to deal with stress and to manage their stress and to be more effective in their lives as a result of that. So please join us next week for that. It's going to be amazing. We are so grateful that you were here tonight with us. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for your participation. You make all of the difference, and we're grateful to you. And we will see you next week. Remember, the future is bright. Good night.